Recession fears, tariffs, and of course, falling mortgage rates. All the things are back in the headlines again. The Kansas City real estate market is caught in the middle of all of it. And you might be wondering, is the market going to crash? Should I wait to buy a home? Should I go ahead and do it right now? In this video, we're going to break down exactly what's happening with the Kansas City housing market and what this means for you if you're thinking about buying a home in Kansas City in 2025. Starting with part number one, Jordan, we've got mortgage rates.
Nick, we have this chart. We're going to throw it up on the screen. We do it every time we have a market update video. We got to talk about interest rates. And clearly, we are in a downtrend. We haven't seen this in quite some time. Back in January, the 30-year mortgage was right above 7%. Right now, we're about 6.8, 6.7. So rates are going down, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
And this isn't the type of decline that we really want to see. And according to this article from Business Insider, mortgage rates are going down, not necessarily a good thing. And then you've got all the cookie cutter houses in the stock photo. But the important part of this article, it says lower rates could be a red flag for serious economic weakness and potential recession. Usually in a recession, we see interest rates dip, and it says a trade war is underway, government spending is being cut, immigration is being restricted, which all hurt economic growth. It says if a recession does play out, the Federal Reserve may indeed cut rates faster than anticipated to encourage growth, sending mortgage rates down as well. Now, Jordan, I've spent like years making these market update videos at least once a month, at some point every single week. And I just felt like I was repeating myself, hey, we need mortgage rates to go down so that things can get a little bit better and more affordable in the housing market. And, you know, beggars can't be choosers. The rates are finally going down. It's just, we'd much rather see this happen alongside declining inflation rather than a declining economy.
Yeah, if it's tied to a recession, nobody wants to see that. And if it is a mild recession, it's still going to be probably a competitive housing market because there's such short supply. And if it's mild, the rates might not drop, that much.
And that's exactly what this article hints at a couple paragraphs lower. It says if rates drop without an increase in housing supply, home prices could skyrocket as they did during the pandemic. Those who bought homes during the pandemic are not sitting on that much debt and have a lower risk of bankruptcy. I want to also add they're setting on higher levels of equity because home prices have gone up significantly during that time. But this says and concludes it all adds up to a few forced sales, and home prices are unlikely to fall.
That's a great point about home equity. If we do have a mild recession, most homeowners, they're not going to be forced to sell. And if they do lower interest rates, if we fall into a recession, the homeowners over the last couple years that purchased their home at higher rates, they're just going to be able to refinance. And then the buyers that are out there, they're still looking to get into a home. It's going to get a little bit more competitive.
That's right. And we're going to break down exactly why that's the case here in part number 3. But going back to the first part about mortgage rates, this is what we've been waiting for, right? This is what we asked for, and here it is. So we can't complain too much, but we do have to answer a more serious question, which is, let's say prices don't drop that much, but mortgage rates do. We fall into a recession. Could that lead the Kansas City housing market to crash? And that is part number 2 of the video. Before we dive into all of the specifics, any questions buying, selling a home in the Kansas City suburbs, we'd love to help. We'd love to put together a strategy, especially for these times, to help you navigate it so you don't have to compete, but you can also make sure the timing is right based on your situation and not all of these confusing variables that will continue to go in and out of the headlines over the next several years. So if any questions, give us a phone call, text message, email. There's also a full guide and a full video that breaks down our entire process linked at the top of the description. But Jordan, we've got to start with the housing market crash and the potential for it here in Kansas City.
Now, this part of the video is not about whether or not the housing market is going to crash because interest rates are falling. But if a recession hits, what does it do to the housing market and how does that affect the housing market here in Kansas City?
And we've got another article. It's also from Business Insider. We try to diversify the source, but the last 2 videos, it's so funny. Both of our articles have come from the same source. And the reason is because these are the best ones we found on the topic. They cited the best and most credible sources and provided the best context. So this one says, when will the housing market crash? Economists don't foresee it in 2025. Here are a couple reasons why. It says, because first, all the big experts, the Fannie Mae's, the Mortgage Banker Association, National Association of Realtors, who we don't really trust that much, they say home prices should increase around 3.5% in 2025. Mortgage Bankers Association says they might increase by 1.3%. National Association of Realtors say around 2%. Now, Jordan, before we continue with the article, over the last couple of years, we've seen things as high as like 8%. We've seen them around the 5 to 6%. Last year was arguably between like 4 and 6%. This is a noticeable decrease in the rate that home prices have been increasing.
Yeah, so much slower than previous years, especially during the pandemic, where we were seeing 10+% yearly increases in home prices. So this is much more normal to have a 3 to 5% appreciation in home prices.
That's right. So even with kind of the direction this article is going is even if we did start to see more of a recession, right now we're looking at kind of a flat line, a normalization of how quickly homes are appreciating rather than just an all-out collapse. And we'll get to the reason for that in a second. It continues and says, Federal Reserve predicted the unemployment rate could tick up if unemployment rises, people start losing their jobs. We could experience a downturn, which may hurt the housing market and cause home prices to go down a little bit. But even then, prices might not drop enough to make a big difference in affordability. And this is exactly why we brought up that first article in part number 1. Even if people started losing their jobs, they could refinance, lock in lower monthly payments, or they're already sitting on piles of equity because they've been in their homes over the last couple of years where home prices did increase tremendously.
Yeah, and I like to relate the unemployment, when we're talking about housing crashes, let's go back to 2008, 2009, where we had 2 years of 9+% unemployment. So nothing compared to what we're seeing today.
And the other big difference is supply is actually shrinking. In 2008, we had tons of supply on the market. People were buying 3 or 4 homes a piece. Not possible today. And there are a couple big demographic trends we're going to get to in just a second. But this hints on that point exactly. It says there's just simply not enough supply, even if something happened that caused a lot of home buyers to drop out of the market. So let's say they lose their jobs, the demand for buying a home goes down. Demand still likely wouldn't drop low enough to push prices down significantly. A big reason for that is millennials. They finally surpassed baby boomers as the largest demographic of home buyers, making up an overwhelming 38% of the market. It also goes on to say Gen Z is now starting to look for homes, and as baby boomers move into nursing homes or pass away, the homes they leave behind should help add to the housing supply in a future phenomenon dubbed the silver tsunami. So right now, Jordan, what we're seeing is we've got low supply. That silver tsunami, probably a long way out. It's more of a structural trend that we're getting closer to every year. But right now at the present, we've got generational demand from the largest section of home buyers.
Yeah, the millennials make up like 38% of the buyers in the market right now. And when we talk about this supply shortage, we're short like anywhere from 2 to 6 million homes on a national level. And when it comes to the baby boomers, that's a big demographic. And by year 2030, they're all going to be over 65 years old. So they're going to be looking to possibly downsize or move into a retirement community or something like that.
Now, that will certainly matter down the road. But really, if we're talking about recession now in the near term future, next couple of years, again, we're still hit with that limited supply. This says a sudden drop in home buying demand can lead to a housing market crash, but lower demand also typically occurs when mortgage rates are high. It says prices can plateau or dip without the market actually crashing. And I want to bring this back again to 2008. We saw prices drop about 20+% over the span of that recession. Right now, given all the equity, the lack of foreclosures, banks not wanting to actually foreclose on properties, and also the potential for mortgage rates decreasing, which gives a lot of homeowners an out by refinancing into a lower rate. That is all a massive buffer combined with the shortage of supply of homes on the market. The other contrast with 2008 is we had a lot of new construction. We had a lot of supply hitting the markets. One thing happening right now is the tariffs, right? A lot of uncertainty, the prospect of a trade war. I mean, we're even seeing some build jobs where we're anticipating costs going up due to that uncertainty, the cost of materials increasing. So it either slows construction or results in less homes being built or makes them more expensive to build. All of that does impact the Kansas City housing market, even if you don't like new construction homes, because it takes away from inventory that would otherwise be pre-existing. So it is a zero-sum trade-off. in this environment. But Jordan, I think the biggest part of this is we don't expect, even if there is a recession, for the market to crash like it did in 2008 because of all those structural factors. We're probably more so looking at a flat line and how quickly prices go up, or a little bit of a dip.
Yeah, and if you look at a median sales price chart for national home sales, we actually peaked back in Q4 of 2022. Prices have actually dropped about 5% since then, and they've just been kind of zigzagging along. And if interest rates decline, prices are just gonna go up, especially if we don't have like a huge recession.
And that's exactly what we're going to get to here in part number 3. It's all about what does this mean for you? And I know a lot of the articles, a lot of the data that we've mentioned in this video is about national things going on. We want to make this more specific to the Kansas City real estate market and your decision, whether it makes sense to buy right now, whether it makes more sense for you to wait. So Jordan, we're going to start with the first question, which is, will there be a crash? And what if I regret buying too early?
Yeah, so my personal opinion, I don't believe there's going to be a market crash unless we have a huge economic downturn. What I think, we might see prices drop just a little bit, but overall, I think they're going to be steady. And then if interest rates drop, I think they're going to keep rising.
I think that's a good take, and I'm pretty aligned with that. I do think that prices very well could plateau. Real estate's local. It all depends on the market. Over the last year or so, some areas of Kansas City, Missouri, we saw prices drop, whereas other suburbs like at Overland Park, Olathe, etc., we certainly continue to see bidding wars. So it all just depends on the specific area we're talking about. But I think there are big structural factors that say even if prices do dip a little bit, even if they're a little volatile, even if they flatline, generationally and structurally, we're going to see those prices continue to climb. Real estate, it's meant to be held for long stretches of time, especially right now, because there's limited inventory and there's growing demand among some of the largest markets out there, millennials, Gen Z, that's only going to continue. So even if there's a little bit of a drop now, I'd anticipate as long as you can ride that wave, you're going to be sitting on levels of equity, just like those home sellers that we're talking about with those first articles. So question number 2, Jordan, what if I wait and get priced out of the market?
Now, this is certainly possible. And if you are in need to buy a house, it's almost impossible to time it. So the best thing to do is just develop a good strategy.
That's right. Nobody's got a crystal ball, and the timing is always tricky. Like everything we're talking about in this video, we've made several market update videos about over the last several years. It's kind of like the news cycle just gets bored with one thing, brings up the other things. Truth is, nobody really knows, but one thing we can be for sure of is that over a 10-year stretch, we've never really seen home prices dip. 2008 was the closest factor in that, but there are so many different things happening with the real estate market that will continue pushing those prices up. Number 3, Jordan, are rates going to drop and then cause prices to explode again?
So I think it is possible for rates to drop a little bit throughout the rest of 2025. I think the Fed's got maybe 2 rate cuts lined up. I don't think we're going to see rates hit the 3-4% mark again. And if they did, I think the housing market would explode.
Yeah, I don't think it would be as crazy as 2019 or 2020, but even right now, again, we mentioned that interest rate chart. We'll put it back up on the screen here. Even over the last couple of months, above 7%, slightly under 7%, we're still seeing bidding wars depending on the suburb, right? It all depends on the specific location. But yes, if rates start to drop, you're going to see a lot of people refinance. So housing inventory, the number of options in the market goes down because now they don't have to buy. And number 2 is we're likely going to see a lot more people jump into the market. Now, Jordan, number 5 is, should I be looking at homes now, or will there be better deals later this year?
Well, that totally depends on your personal situation. So it's really hard to time the market. If you have to buy right now, then it would be a good idea to start looking right now and get prepared. But if you can wait and you have some time, the prices can fluctuate based on the season. So we normally see it slow down in the winter months, during the school year, because a lot of people make their moves during the summer.
Yeah, and so I know there's a fine line. We're walking a tightrope between, hey, you can't time the market, there's no crystal ball, and hey, there is some parts of the year where competition increases. This is where we start when people reach out for help, trying to find the right home to buy, build, etc. in Kansas City. We want to know what time of year you've got to be in that home by, so we can kind of reverse engineer the process and work backwards.
And that leads us to our last question, which is, If rates drop below 6%, will I be able to compete in this market?
That's the magic threshold that a lot of these guys are saying, that's when home price is going to start to tick up. You're going to see a lot of competition. But the truth is, it's a trick question because we don't believe you should compete in the first place. No matter what the market looks like, there is always a strategy that can lead to you finding the right deal that a lot of other buyers in the market are overlooking. The reason competing is bad is because you never want to get involved in bidding wars, having to overpay, risking, waiving an inspection, appraisal, all of which can expose you to tens of thousands of dollars of out-of-pocket expenses if you don't have to. So top of the description, there's a full guide. It'll take you through that strategy to find the best deals in the market without having to compete. It'll tell you what the threshold, at what point does it make sense to compete? And finally, what can you do to make sure if you do decide it's worth it, that way you're not risking overpaying. So click on that free guide link down below. Any questions, buying, selling a home in Kansas City, we'd love to make all of this specific to you. And if you're not ready to reach out just yet, we've got this full video right here. It takes you through the entire process. So click right there and we'll see you on the other side.